So when we were thinking and working with all of the many bookers that we have access to at Meadowlark, we said to ourselves, who would be the perfect first guest to have? And to me, it was an absolute no-brainer. I wanted Dan. Dan was gracious enough to get to work early. He's got his own show that starts in 66 minutes live on Batard and Friends YouTube channel. We'll be on DraftKings at 11 o'clock. Dan Batard, thank you.
How flattering that you would have me involved with this, and thank you. And I hope that your audience understands the achievement. Your most loyal audience understands the achievement that you have reached in creating for yourself a career and a media business opportunity outside of your other career, and most rewardingly, doing it in a venture that's creative versus, sort of the accounting and architecture logistics of what you do that can build a stadium. But I imagine this little playground for you is more yours, and that you're even prouder of it than you were of a baseball stadium, because you've got a platform, you've got a loyal audience, and now you've built a business that is growing, and that DraftKings is supporting, and obviously that Meadowlark is supporting. So congratulations. Because if your audience doesn't understand the degree of difficulty on what you did, it really is a monument to your will that you were able to create another career after your allegedly more successful career.
Was that so hard? How could that not have been what you did on your show when we started? Like that seems to me to be such a nice way to introduce Nothing Personal to the audience. And I felt as though when you did it on your show, that you must have been more things in your mind, because you were conducting, as you do, for 3 hours every single day. But I would like to just clip that and show it to the people where maybe they didn't quite get it the first time.
Well, but you didn't get it the first time, and I understand why you didn't get it the first time, because you don't understand why it is that anyone would find you unlikable. You are of the belief that there are not people who dislike David Samson. There are only people who do not know David Samson. And so welcoming you into our world when you are a far different taste, a far different, welcoming you to our alleged echo chamber when the things you say aren't the things that echo, you would understand why the audience would be resistant to something that never before has had what you bring, which outside of me is a reason to hate what you're listening to instead of only love what you listen to. It is nice and wonderful to have a audience that only likes you. That feels good. It's better to have an audience that likes you and dislikes you, because then you've got a larger audience.
Oh, there's no question. I think about that all the time when I was with the Marlins. I'm fine with you hate listening or love listening, because the only thing I'm guarding against is apathy. And one of the things that you've done with Meadowlark and you've done with your show, and people may not remember because some of them weren't born. I started with you on your show 20 years ago. I started right in the beginning as a team president doing movie reviews when you were on land terrestrial radio, only in Miami.
There must be so many people here who don't know some of the great details of this story, but let it be known when I say that this particular show is a monument to his will, that over the objections of the owner of his baseball team, who was his boss and family, really, David Samson continued to review movies. Keep in mind, review movies. It wasn't just the platform that was interesting to him. That was interesting enough. It wasn't just the ability to talk sports or baseball or show that expertise. I believe that the reason that he defied every boss that he had and risked firing is because he simply wanted to give his movie opinions weekly in a venue that showed people he was something outside of baseball team president identity guy. And I don't think your audience has any earthly idea, A, how important it was to you, and B, the fights that you had to fight in order to keep your independence before you eventually just lost your independence. At some point, the owner broke and said, you can't do that anymore.
So the story behind that is I loved the opportunity because I watched a movie every day, even while running the Marlins. And I knew that you were the most popular show in Miami, and I wanted people to learn a different side of me. And I thought that I could live in your zany world and I could handle it. And nobody agreed with me. Our PR people, the owner, the general manager, every general manager I had, every manager I had, the players who I knew and were close to, they all said the same thing about you and your show, which is just stay away. Don't ever be a part of that. As a matter of fact, players didn't like going on the show with you, and we didn't allow players to go on the show with you because you were such a smart interviewer, and you would get players to do things that they didn't like doing. And the fear was you were doing that to me. And what happened is about a decade later, Jeffrey, the owner, he actually did threaten me, my job. And I didn't think that it was possible because we didn't have a stadium. But once the stadium happened, it became clear that I was a little more dispensable. We were years removed from the World Series. And he said, if you do Le Batard one more time, you're fired on the spot. And the message was delivered by his PR guy. And so I had to quit, but I only did it for, remember, Dan, it was under a year that I stayed away. And I remember the first time back.
Let's let the audience in on the details, though, of what exactly happened there, because I really want your audience to understand the backstory and the roots of how important all of this is to you. The idea that you could show anybody a little bit more range of your personality and your humanity, because the advice that you've been getting from people for a long time, run away from Dan, is the same advice I've been getting about you, which is run away from David. And I don't know who's more isolated on that. I'm guessing you might have more consensus on run away from Dan than I have on run away from David, because some people around here have actually seen you be useful, as opposed to your family and your loved ones, which they think I only embarrass you publicly. I only create the wrestling character that comes very naturally to you to put you in positions that are manipulated so that you may look in public in ways that are embarrassing to them, but not embarrassing to you, because you might be the most calculated individual that I have ever met. I don't know how often you're surprised by something that you've done.
I would say that you were a part of something that the audience doesn't know. I co-wrote a play back in the day for charity, and I asked you, Dan, to play a part in that play, and you actually performed it with me. And it was a play about marriage. And if you recall what it was about a couple. It was called Do I Do? And it was about whether or not you should get married. And it is a man asking a woman to marry him and then fast forwarding through their whole miserable marriage and then going back to the present and saying, you know what, I changed my mind. I don't want to get married because I see where this ends. And you were single at the time. And I remember talking to you about this concept, and you said to me, and this has been a role you've played for me, and I'm so appreciative, it hasn't been totally effective. You said, David, this may not land well with your family. And it landed so badly. My wife at the time, my kids at the time, hated that play, hated that I was doing things to get more attention, and wanted to know whether that was me manifesting my unhappiness in my personal life through that piece of art.
You are vulnerable with your audience, and you challenge yourself in all sorts of ways like that create discomforts for you because of the challenge, I think. But I don't know that you have a larger challenge anywhere in your existence, and I don't know if your audience would know you this vulnerably or this personally, than the challenge that you have of being lonely at the center of everything that surrounds you, because you are surrounded by a whole lot of people who simply don't understand you, and furthermore, don't accept the parts of you that they don't understand. Try to change, try to alter, try to convince you that you wish to be something else as a 57-year-old man.
Why do you think I love doing Nothing Personal? Why do you think I love coming on your show once a week to this day? And it went from a movie review to a quarter of a segment to a full hour, because I get a sense of accomplishment. The only thing that's come close professionally And you'll be shocked at this. And I think people will be. It has nothing, winning the World Series wasn't it, because it wasn't me. While I helped put the team together and ran the team, I didn't feel as though that was mine, though I still loved the fact that I was a part of it. This is mine, nothing personal. This started literally, my mother was the first and only person to listen to the first show back in October of 19. And you were, when I was forming this show, I don't know if you'll remember this, Dan, but I talked to you about the idea. And what you said to me at the time is, I don't think it's sustainable because you don't realize the level of lonely it will be to do a show by yourself. You're going to have to figure out a different voice, a co-host. You're going to have to do something. And 5 years later, when DraftKings does a deal with Meadowlark and I do a deal with Meadowlark and they want an extra hour, and now has been the perfect time to add an extra voice a couple days a week. We're going to add Coca one day a week. And it's not that you were wrong when we started. It's not that you were right. It's that the evolution of the lonely indicates that doing things in a playpen with you and others is true happiness.
I think that I was wrong, and I somehow underrated the will of a man who not only built a stadium on time with no cost overruns in Miami, which people do not understand. That is a bigger miracle than Jesus coming back from the dead, being able to do that in Miami. But
people hated me, Dan.
Underestimated the will of a man who runs 7 continents in 7 days, or 7 marathons in 7 days on 7 continents, because I do know how lonely doing this by yourself is. Jeremy Taché, who works for us and will have any number of broadcast opportunities in his future, I grabbed him by the wrist one time and I brought him into a room where you were doing the show by yourself. And I just pointed to the TV and said, look at what he's doing. Watch it for 5 minutes. I assure you, this is not the choice that you will make with whatever it is that you want from the rest of your life. I did a show by myself early in my career. It made me a little bit crazy. I don't have the need for control that you do, which isn't to say I don't have a need for control. It just means I don't have the need for control you do. And so you like to control your own space. And you're used to being this kind of lonely. I will tell you that my career changed on a dime when I decided I would not be the only voice in my head doing this. I would make it all communal. I had the equivalent of my midlife crisis in my early 30s professionally, where I very much decided that writing was too lonely and that doing the show the way that you do it was too lonely. I wanted shared experience. I wanted shared community. And I wanted the thing that your audience probably doesn't even notice that it doesn't get from this show, which is you laughing uncontrollably. You do not get to laugh uncontrollably when you're the only one talking.
So sometimes I laugh with voices in my head. When you put the network together and Meadowlark, you've got your show, Nothing Personal, Pablo Torre finds out. And as the person in charge of Meadowlark, and we can talk for hours about what Meadowlark is and how it came to be. But when you're thinking about putting shows together, tell me about how you match, because Pablo's show, my show, and your show, they're very different shows. Was that by design, or is that just because those are the people who you happen to, be friends with and do deals with?
It is by design in a couple of different ways. One is that I wish to work with and around my friends, and I wish for them to create and have the same sort of business opportunities and independence that we have, so that they may be protected by us in a difficult media time and build their own thing that can live outside of us. But more relevantly is that all of my friends tend to be people with whom I work, who I admire or respect. And this next part is hugely important. Are they interesting? Are they interesting enough that people will follow them in their curiosities because they think differently, they do differently? When I talk about the monument that you have built here that is a celebration of the things that you are, it starts with you realizing that there was a lane for you to be smarter than anyone in sports business that wouldn't be hard for you to occupy, because everyone in sports business was so profoundly dumb. It helps that you are smart and you have uncommon expertise, but you have a lane that's uniquely your own, and now you've been able to grow something outside of that lane. So when I say it's by design, you and Pablo are interesting people. You have interesting thoughts. There are a lot of people at the trough right now giving their opinions on things. There are very few that you feel like you have to listen to. Your most loyal listeners prove in the numbers that they feel like they need to be informed by you on the things that are, at least in sports business. You've got more range than that, but I know the impact you're having in sports business, where you have experts and executives listening to what you're doing because they're learning. It's not even just entertaining. There's nourishment there.
When you see what happens with Pablo, and again, he's going to be on Bill Simmons' podcast today. There's a lot of attention with the Bill Belichick story. Obviously, there's things that I do that get attention. Do you wince ever, or as the head of Meadowlark, do you love whatever the attention is, both beef and not beef, or are there times when you wince and say, "Hey, guys, that's too much"?
Here's what's pretty funny about you asking me that question. Obviously, I'm not terribly shy about attention, although I would prefer that the work speak for me, because there are places that I'm insecure where I personally, being on a red carpet, that's not for me, but I like the work. The part that I'm enjoying with you and Pablo is that both of you are greedy and needy about loving that attention. Both of you, Pablo, since he was a kindergartner, wherever it is that he was repressed, I don't even know the places that he might have been repressed in his childhood, wherever it is the disciplines were, but I assure you that his greedy and needy craving for attention is something that was not filled until now, when he sidled up to Bill Belichick and started snooping around his bedroom in a way that now brings him all of the attention he could crave. I would love to have an attention off with you and Pablo, where we have a fight. Who likes being the center of attention more, you or Pablo?
I will end by telling you that there's a fourth person, a fourth musketeer named Dominique Foxworth. And Dominique, Pablo, and I recorded a show that I think is being released today, actually, where Pablo asked us to rank each other in the room who's got the biggest ego out of Pablo, Dominique, and myself.
Oh, wow.
And it was great television, because we looked at each other, we laughed, and I assume Pablo kept it in the show, but he's got such a big editing staff and post-production, who knows? And it was, we tied for first, and we just
funny.
laughed. No one was going to give up on that.
I don't think of Dominique as needing as much attention as the other two of you, but he's also had plenty in his life, right? So you guys, president of the Marlins, journalist on TV, probably doesn't have quite the same popularity, cool factor, ego that a professional athlete has to have when he's fighting other professional athletes for money and attention. It's probably, in fact, it's not probably. I can say with great certainty that whatever it is that Dominique had to overcome in terms of competition and ego was greater than whatever you had to overcome in executiveness, and whatever it is that Pablo and I had to overcome in media. The degree of difficulty of climbing over the competition was a little harder where Dominique resides than where the other two of you reside.
You could be right. Dan, you're forever my first guest on the new Nothing Personal. And you've got a show to do. You're 48 minutes away. Go to it. Get ready. Go back to the pre-production meeting. I appreciate your time. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for the platform. Thanks for being a guest. And we're going to get back to the show.
Congratulations. How is it that you don't understand the difference between me congratulating you on this success and me welcoming you into our Miami audience's world as the guy who at my 50th birthday party said 1.2 billion F you to a bunch of Miami taxpayers? How do you not understand the difference between those two things?
Ladies and gentlemen, Dan Le Batard, thank you so much for your time.